Hello my beautiful and makeup loving friends. If this is your first time to my channel, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Emily and today we are going to be testing out the brand new Huda Beauty Ruby Obsessions palette. But wait, we are actually going to be doing a palette showdown between the Huda Beauty Ruby Obsessions palette and the Ace Beauté Blossom Passion palette. So if you are ready for that, let's go ahead and jump right on in. So the Huda Beauty Ruby Obsessions palette retails for $27. You get 10 grams of product, you get 9 pans of eyeshadow, and you get a nice little mirror in here. This palette is also very compact and cute and good for travel. The Ace Beauté Blossom Passion palette retails for $34.99. You get 19.2 grams of product in this palette. You get 12 pans of eyeshadow. It comes with a nice big old mirror, and it is very sleek, so this is good for travel as well. So I went ahead and did one eye with the Ace Beauty Blossom Passion palette and one eye with the brand new Huda Beauty Ruby Obsessions palette. I wanted to compare and contrast and see what is similar about these palettes and what is different. So if you want to see how I was able to get this eye look today, and if you want to know which palette is on which eye, go ahead and keep on watching. So we are going to be doing something very similar to what I did on my video from a couple days ago when I tried out the Huda Beauty Amethyst Obsessions palette. Today we are going to be testing out the Huda Beauty Ruby Obsessions palette, but I had a subscriber comment on my video that I should compare it to the Ace Beauté Blossom Passion palette, and I already have a review on this palette. I've actually done quite a few videos on this guy on my channel, so if you want to check those out, of course I will have them in the cards and linked down below. But I figured I would put these two to the test against each other and do one eye with the Ace Beauty palette and one eye with the Huda Beauty Ruby Obsessions palette. The main goal of this is to see how similar they are, so that if you have the Ace Beauty palette, you don't have to go out and purchase the Ruby Obsessions palette, and vice versa. So I'm really excited to do this, so let's go ahead and hop right on in. So as per usual, I am just taking my ColourPop and No Filter concealer in the shade 00. This is what I use as a white eye primer, and I like it because it's still a little bit sticky, but it's super white, so it helps to basically make my eyeshadows pop and last a pretty long time. So my eyelids are incredibly dry for some reason, so my eye primer went on insanely chunky and patchy and weird, so I am really hoping that doesn't affect the eyeshadows. But let's go ahead and hop into the first color. So I'm taking my Morphe M578 brush, which is the same brush I always use. It is a fat, chubby pencil brush, and I'm gonna go ahead and hop into this kind of deep raspberry pink shade. And I'm just gonna pick this up on the brush, and I'm just gonna start mapping out where I want my eye look to be. And I am just really hoping and praying that this comes out pretty okay and that it doesn't look super weird and that one eye doesn't look completely different than the other, because I'm going to a little concert that's going on in my town tonight, and I'm going with my boyfriend and his family, so I'm just really hoping that I don't look like a clown and just totally embarrass myself. So now for the other eye, I'm going to go ahead and hop right on into this beautiful deep pink raspberry shade, which is the shade Desire from the Ace Beauty Blossom Passion palette, and I am picking up the exact same brush, although this is a clean one, so I'm going to go ahead and just coat the brush here and do the exact same thing. So just going to basically sketch out the exact same shape and hope to goodness that this ends up being a similar color. So right off the bat, I'm noticing that the Ace Beauty shade seems to be a bit more of a kind of brighter neon raspberry pink versus the Huda Beauty shade, which is a bit more muted and a bit more smoky looking, if you will. So I'm not necessarily against that, it just looks a little bit different. It's not super noticeable yet, but I don't know, we'll just have to see how the other colors go. So on my right side, I have the Ace Beauty eye, and on the left side, I have the Huda Beauty eye. Do these shades look similar? Do they look different? To me, I think that the Ace Beauty side looks a little bit prettier, but the Huda Beauty side, as you can kind of see up in my crease here, it was a lot easier to blend, and it kind of blended itself, which is what happened with the Amethyst Obsessions palette. I found that those shadows were super blendable, and they kind of blended themselves. I didn't really do a whole lot of work up here to get that blended, and it kind of just did it on its own. As per on the Ace Beauty side, you can see we have a bit of a harsh line here, but that'll be easy to blend out in a little bit. So speaking of blending out, I'm going to go ahead and pick up my Sephora Pro Crease brush, and I'm just hopping into this kind of creamy pinky shade here, and I'm just going to blend out the Huda Beauty side. I'm just using super light pressure to do so. I'm just going to start blending that edge. So this is blending extremely well and easily, which is what I expected. As I said, the Huda Beauty Amethyst palette blended really nicely too. And I noticed with those shades they were a bit more muted as well, so maybe it's because of the fact that they're not so bright and they're not so neon that they're really blendable. I know that sometimes certain pigments and whatnot can make things a little bit harder to blend, so maybe because these aren't so brightly pigmented, they are really blendable. So picking up my Luxie Beauty 231 brush, I'm going to go ahead and hop into this Gardenia shade, which was the closest out of the palettes. This one is a bit more tan, and it's a little bit more, I don't know, it's a little bit deeper than the one from the Huda Beauty palette. Just gonna softly blow this out here. And as you can see on the Huda Beauty side, we have lost a little bit of pigment from where we initially placed the shadow down, but that's pretty typical. I'm always going back in with like layer after layer of eyeshadow to get it super bright and intense. So taking the same exact little Precise blender brush that I always do, my Makeup Addictions Precise blender brush, I'm gonna go ahead and hop into the first shade that we laid down from the Huda Beauty palette and pick this guy up. And I just want to re-intensify that shade because I really love the raspberry tone that we're working with here. And I'm going to go into some of the deeper reds in just a little bit, but I really want that raspberry tone to not get lost once we add the deeper reds into this look. And now just wiping this baby off on my color switch, I'm picking up some more of Desire, and I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other eye. So I have wiped this baby off once again, and we are going to go ahead and pick up some of this beautiful burgundy deep matte color from the Huda Beauty shade. And I'm just going to add some definition on the outer V and give this eye look some depth. And so far I am really liking the way that this is turning out. I think it looks really pretty so far. I just really hope that I don't end up ruining this guy down the road. And I'm going to go ahead and pick up a little bit of Red Rose from the Ace Beauty palette, and I'm going to mix it with Lust and see if I can get a similar color to what we have in the Huda palette. Because Lust from the Ace Beauty palette is a bit deeper than this shade from the Huda palette, and I want to make these as similar as possible. And I know that a lot of times people do like mixing shadows together, so I want to see if this is achievable and if we can get a very similar shade to the one in the Huda palette by mixing these. So I'm digging what we have going on here, so I'm going to go ahead and pick up my ColourPop No Filter Concealer yet again. Where is my brush? Why are you hiding from me, brush? I am picking up just a plain old synthetic flat brush, and I'm going to pick this baby up on the brush. And today I just want to go for a half cut crease because, as I said earlier, I am going out tonight and I don't want to try anything that's too risky and too ballsy right now, because if it ends up looking bad, I don't want to wash this off and redo it. So I'm going to go for something that I know will more than likely look okay. So let's go ahead and get started. I don't know why, but I always end up with like the weirdest shape on my right eye, and my left eye always looks pretty okay. I don't know what that's about. My hand just doesn't want to work with my right eye apparently, but we'll make it work. So I'm gonna go ahead and hop into this deep kind of raspberry metallic shade down here, and I'm picking this up because I don't really see a whole lot else in the Ace Beauty palette that looks similar enough to any of these kind of metallic-y shimmery shades, and the whole point of this is to compare them. So even though I might not be 100% comfortable with a shade like this, we are just gonna go ahead and work with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just stamp this down right on to the lid. This shade is a really beautiful looking kind of pink toned metallic-y duochrome red. The metallics in the Huda Beauty Gemstone Obsessions palettes are supposed to be duochromes, and I can see a little bit of a pink shift when I turn my head, but when I look straight forward it looks a little bit more burgundy and a little bit more of that traditional kind of blue-based red. For the opposite eye, I'm taking the exact same brush that you just witnessed me wipe off on my color switch, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up this gorgeous shade called Orchid, which seems to be a very similar type of color to what we see in the Huda Beauty palette. Get on the brush there, little fella. Okay, right off the bat, I am noticing that this is way more red based. So I'm actually going to pick up some of Eros down here, which is a fuchsia-y metallic, and mix it with Orchid to see if we can get a similar shade. So let's go ahead and see if that did any bit of a difference. And a little bit. A little. Not a lot. Not a lot. And I'm just patting over top of what I just placed down a little bit more of just the basic Orchid shade, not mixed with Eros. And now that I've done that, it definitely does look a little bit more similar. So I'm just going in on the outer V here with the shade Desire, just to mesh everything in on the Ace Beauty eye. And this is the same exact shade that we placed down during the very first step. And I'm repeating the same exact step on the Huda Beauty eye, only with the shade that corresponded to Desire, which was that beautiful matte kind of raspberry pink. So lower lash line time, I have cleaned off this brush and I'm just going to pick up the same exact color from the Huda Beauty palette and we will run this underneath the lashes. So just running this bad boy underneath the lashes here, making everything nice and smoky, as I always do. And I accidentally connected the inner corner to the lower lash line, which I didn't want to do, but I can go back in just a few minutes and clean that up with concealer and whatnot. I have kind of a few spots here that are needing some help, so I'll fix that with concealer in just a little bit. And picking up some Desire on my wiped off Morphe M578, I am just repeating the exact same step. For the finishing touch, I'm just picking up some more of that creamy pinky matte from the Huda palette. And I'm just running this guy under the lower lash line here just to clean everything up a little bit. And of course, what we do to this eye, we have to do to this eye because we're trying to make them twins, although they're looking more like half sisters right now. But I'm just going to pick up some of Gardenia from the Ace Beauty palette. Holy crap, that was a lot of fallout. I'm doing the same exact thing, just running it right under the lower lash line. This is the eye look so far. I'm gonna go ahead and throw on some liner and lashes as per usual, and we will meet back here in just a couple minutes and go ahead and discuss how I am feeling about these two palettes and what is similar and what is different about them. So I am back with lashes and liner on, and I am ready to discuss these palettes. So obviously in the Ace Beauty palette, you get 3 more eyeshadows and you're paying $7 extra to get those eyeshadows. So that is obviously the biggest difference between these two palettes. As far as the color scheme goes, I actually thought that there was going to be way more dupes than there actually is. I only actually found 6 shades that were similar or dupes or somewhat dupes in these two palettes. In the Huda Ruby Obsessions palette, I found that the creamy pinky shade from the Huda palette was very similar to Gardenia from the Ace Beauty palette. Gardenia has more of a tan undertone and is a bit deeper than the creamy pinky shade from the Huda palette. The duochrome burgundy metallic from the Huda palette was also very similar to Orchid from the Ace Beauty palette. I had to mix together Orchid and Eros from the Ace Beauty palette to get something that was close enough to the Huda palette to match on my eyes. Orchid on its own is a bit more of a true rusty red tone, whereas the shade in the Huda palette is a bit more of a pinky based red. The beautiful raspberry matte that I used to start out my transition with today was very similar to the shade Desire. In my opinion, Desire was a bit more neon and a little bit pinkier than the Huda shade. The deep burgundy red from the Huda palette was very similar to the shade Red Rose, but I mixed in a little bit of the shade Lust because I felt like Red Rose wasn't quite deep enough and it was a bit too much of a blue-based true red. So you can get a similar effect as long as you mix those two shades together. Now the red satiny shade from the Huda palette wasn't really similar to anything in the Ace Beauty palette. The closest that I found was the shade Eros mixed with Orchid yet again. And finally, the blackened burgundy with pink shimmer from the Huda palette was most similar to the shade Seduction from the Ace Beauty palette. Although Seduction is a matte, it is a very similar tone to the metallic that we see in the Huda palette. And I think I forgot to mention this one, but the corally peachy shade from the Huda palette right here is very similar to the shade Carnation from the Ace Beauty palette, which is this beautiful neon pinky peachy goodness. Obviously Carnation is a lot more neon, a little bit more bright, but you can probably get a similar effect if you build up the peachy shade from the Huda palette. Those are all of the shades that are most comparable for me between the two palettes. As I said, I thought there was going to be more dupes to compare, and some of these weren't even really dupes. I had to mix together some of the shades from the Ace Beauty palette to get something comparable to the Huda shade. And I found that the Ace Beauty palette has more so of a pink undertone undertone to most of the shades, and there is some actual pink eyeshadow shades in there as well, versus the Ruby Obsessions palette, which does have some beautiful red and raspberry mattes to it, but the shimmers themselves and the duochromes themselves aren't necessarily red or pink tones. There's a black, there's a rose gold, there's kind of a bronzy shade, so the actual shimmers themselves are extremely different. The mattes were really the only things that I found to be kind of similar. In my opinion, the Ace Beauty palette is also a little bit more pigmented and a little bit brighter than the Huda Beauty palette, especially on the eyes. I had a bit easier of a time blending out the Huda side than the Ace Beauty side, but I really like the pigmentation that I got from the Ace Beauty side, and I really like the actual colors themselves and the color payoff. I do find that the Huda palettes are a little bit more muted and a little bit more muddy looking, if you will. I also find that they typically don't really wear as long as the Ace Beauty formula does. I've found with all of the Huda Beauty palettes that I've tried, I usually get about 6 hours wear time before they start to muddy up on me. I am going to do a full review on just the Ruby Obsessions palette itself, and I will let you guys know how it wears through the day. I'm going to do a wear test and whatnot, but for right now, I do have experience with the Huda palettes, and I've noticed that they don't really last as long as the Ace Beauty formula does. They are a little bit easier to blend than the Ace Beauty palette, so if you are a beginner and you want to kind of venture into these reddish tones, I definitely think that the Ruby Obsessions palette might be for you. If you like neon eyeshadows and you like bright, colorful looks, and you want something that's long wearing, I definitely suggest the Ace Beauty palette. Now, personally, I like the Huda Beauty shimmers quite a lot better than the Ace Beauty shimmers, just because I like that they're duochromes. I like that they have a little bit of a sparkle in them versus the Ace Beauty shimmers, which are pretty metallic looking on the eyes, but they don't have any sparkle, so they are very smooth. But I think that the sparkle in the Huda Beauty palettes just really help to catch the light and really bring attention to your eye look. So if you were eyeballing the Huda Beauty Ruby's Obsessions palette, but you already own the Ace Beauty Blossom Passion palette, I definitely think that these palettes are different enough to make a difference in your collection. I don't think that you're gonna really be buying dupes. There was only a few dupes that I really found, and the rest of them were actually pretty different. But I think that is all that I have for you guys today. I really hope that you were able to find this helpful, and let me know down in the comments below, do you own either one of these palettes? Do you own both of them? Do you personally find them similar or different? Because, you know, you might feel a different way than I do. So please let me know down in the comments below. But with that being said, I do hope that you consider subscribing if you have not already. I am doing all sorts of makeup goodness happening here right on this channel, so if you are not already subscribed and you would like to be, I would love to see you hit that button down below. I do also hope that you consider giving this video a big old thumbs up and turning on the notification bell if you like to know when I am posting. But I hope you are having an absolutely amazing and beautiful day wherever you are, and thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time. Bye!